Green in Lorwyn Eclipsed is about size and inevitability. It builds mana, grows the board, and asks one simple question: can your opponent keep up? This color wants creatures in play, big bodies, wide boards, and steady pressure that turns into overwhelming force. Green isn't racing, it's building. Every turn adds power, toughness, or resources until combat becomes unavoidable. Fixing and ramp matter here. They let green jump ahead on mana and make splashes realistic, not greedy. If the game reaches a point where your creatures are larger, your board is fuller, and combat favors you every turn, that's green doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Let's break down how green actually wins in Lorwyn Eclipse and which cards are worth committing to. Kicking things off, we have a banger and virulent emissary. For one green, we get a 1/1 elf assassin with death touch, and whenever another creature you control enters, you gain one life. This is a fantastic card. Kicking it off very quickly, it can trade up, it can get you some life gain, and with elves, we're really wanting to flood the board, and this gives us everything we really want in early game, leading into a wide, filled up board of elves. Next up, we have a Blossoming Defense. It's a one-drop instant for one green, and it says target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. This is a combat trick. Definitely something that could get us out of a bind and keep us from being touched by red and blue and black, from being able to kill things with negative counters and things like that. Then we have a Celestial Reunion for X and one green. We have a sorcery. This is a mythic, and it says, as an additional cost to cast a spell, you may choose a creature type and behold two creatures of that type. Search your library for a creature card with your mana value X or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. If the spell's additional cost was paid and the reveal card is the chosen type, put that card onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your hand. This is really going to let us get another elf out of the deck and onto the battlefield, really helping us set up that wide battlefield filled with elves. It's a great card and definitely worth doing if we need something on the field quick and we don't have it in our hand. Next, we have a Reprint in Bloom Tender for one and a green. It's a mythic for a 1/1 elf druid, which has Vivid. You can tap this creature for each color among permanents you control. You can add one mana of that color. Again, most of the time, this is going to count as two. There are ways to cheat this in some of the hybrid mana cards and things that can become another color. You can absolutely do that, especially if you make them other colors. But generally speaking, in a limited format, most of the time you're looking at this being two. But there are going to be ways with some of the mixed mana cards that you could definitely get this out for three, maybe four. And then we have Lease Alana Dignitary for one and a green. We get a 2/3 elf advisor. As an additional cost to cast a spell, behold an elf, or pay two. Again, to behold an elf, you would need to take one on the field, have one in control already, or reveal one from your hand. And this creature has tap, add two green, activate only if there is an elf card in your graveyard. I think realistically dropping this on turn two, it's a decent size card having a 2/3, so it will trade off pretty much most of the time and stick around. But without an elf in the graveyard, we're not going to be able to use its mana ramp, so it is something that isn't the best. However, if we do have that elf in the graveyard, being able to add the two green is going to be very good on us being able to ramp into some more things, play out more elves, and actually follow the game plan. Next up, we have Bristlebane Battler for one and a green. We get a 6/6 Kithkin Soldier, has trample and ward 2. This creature enters with 5 -1/-1 counters on it. And whenever another creature you control enters, while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. Again, this is going to be a pretty solid card. Is if the Kithkin want to fill it up. Also, having Ward 2 means if you drop this early, it's going to be pretty hard for somebody to be able to take it out because it's ahead of the curve for most of the spells that they're going to want to cast against it in order to take this out. So you have some time to actually build this up and actually remove some of those counters and have a bigger creature. And having that trample, if it sticks around and you can get them all off, you could swing with 6 pretty quickly as you fill up your board with the Kithkin. Then we have Dundulin Weaver for 1 and a green. It's a 2/1 Kithkin Druid. When this creature enters, if you control 3 or more creatures, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, a lot of the Kithkin tend to be a little bit smaller, so being able to recur something back to your hand so that you can play it on the battlefield can be quite useful. However, with the 1 toughness, it does die to pretty much everything. So evaluate that as you put it into your deck on whether you're needing that card to come back, because chances are this is probably not going to stick around long. You're probably going to play it so that you can get the card back, and you're immediately willing to trade this off pretty much. All right, and we have Great Forest Druid for 1 and a green. We get a 0/4 Tree Folk Druid with tap, add 1 mana of any color. Again, this would really help us do some ramp. And although, because it has a 0 power, it's not really going to be killing anything, but that 4 toughness will help us be a good blocker while we're also tapping down in order to add extra mana and ramp us up. And then we have Elise Alana Informant for 1 and a green. We get a 3/1 Elf Scout. When this creature enters or dies, surveil 1. This card is going to be quite decent. It's generally going to be able to trade up. Um, the problem is it also could trade down if you try to swing in with it, but it could trade up. And when it comes in, we do get to surveil 1. And then when it dies, we get to surveil again. So we get the ability to get some of those elves into the graveyard that we need for some of the other cards where we really want elves in the graveyard. And we can also help filter so that we can get cards that we actually want into our hand. Now we have Surly Farrier for 1 and a green. We get a 2/2 Kithkin Citizen. With tap, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Again, a lot of these activate only as a sorcery abilities aren't the best because we don't get to use them as a combat trick. That the gaining vigilance could be useful if they're behind on creatures or they don't really have a creature down yet. Being able to give another one vigilance so that a bigger body creature can stay untapped so that it can block next turn is super powerful. But I think that this is a little bit um, not exactly what you're always wanting to do. You typically are going to want these creatures to be able to pump each other. And yes, you can give the +1/+1 and it'll gain vigilance, but realistically, most of the time, you're going to want to keep these untapped so that you can block and or build your board wide. All right, and now we have Midnight Tilling for 1 and a green. We get an instant. This is mill 4 cards. Then you may return a permanent card from among them to your hand. Again, this is a good way for us to get some elves in the graveyard because there are cards that care about elves being in the graveyard. Is also could help us filter out things so that we can get things back from the graveyard depending on the color combination we're playing. It is pretty decent being an instant card. It will allow us actually to do this whenever we can and help us actually get things back that we really want. Especially since we can return one of those permanent cards back to our hand. So we can grab a land if we need it, we can grab a creature if we need it, or an enchantment. We got some options. Then we have Fault Weft Charge for 1 and a green. We get an instant. It says target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. If a creature entered the battlefield under your control this turn, draw a card. This is a pretty solid combat trick. This is going to help you win, either get some easy damage through or kill a creature that was bigger because they blocked and didn't think much about it. It's a typical combat trick, but you do get to draw a card. And I think that that makes this a little bit better because getting to draw a card and screen for 2 and get to pump a creature to sneak in some extra damage or actually kill something, super valuable as green. Now we have Assert Perfection. For 1 and a green, we get a sorcery, and it says target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. So we do get a little bit of a bump. And since we're going to get to swing in, we're also going to get a fight spell out of this for it to actually just wipe something out. So maybe you're putting this on a creature that can trade up without having to take any damage in return and without you having to swing in, but it will allow you to swing in after. So you can use this in your first main phase, take out one of the blockers you were concerned about if you have something large enough, and then that creature still has that +1, and then you can swing it again and hopefully clear out a few other creatures or get that extra point of damage through. It's a pretty decent card. I do think that our previous combat trick in Thought Swift Charge is a better combat trick because it has an instant. However, this will allow us to clear the path a little bit as well, so it does have a pro in that manner. Up next, we have Morkant's Eyes. For 1 and a green, we get a Kindred enchantment. It's an elf. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1, and then it has 4 green green. Sacrifice this enchantment. Create X 2/2 black and green elf creature tokens, where X is the number of elf cards in your graveyard. Activate only as a sorcery. This is the thing. This also counts as an elf, right? So because we care about how many elves are in our graveyard, like I said earlier, we're surveilling. We're like this card surveils as well. We have other ways to get elves into the graveyard. So we're able to create those. And getting to do that, play this down for 2 to surveil, is pretty good because that means we can add 1 extra in. The biggest problem with this is that we do have to pay 6. So this is going to be a late game card. And by late game, for us as green and what we're trying to do, realistically, this is turn 4 in a lot of cases, I would suspect. Even in a limited format, we could easily play this on like a turn 4. Then we have Shimmer Wild's Growth. For 1 and a green. We have an enchantment aura, which is an enchant land. As this aura enters, choose a color. Enchanted land is the chosen color. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of the chosen color. So again, this is a really great way for us to be able to cast something like the Morkant's Eyes earlier. It's a good ramp card because we're essentially paying 2 so that we can mana fix ourselves, but also add additional mana on top of what we already have. All right, we get our first Changeling and Chomping Changeling. For 2 and a green, we get a 1/2 Changeling, so it's every creature type. When this creature enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Um, the card's not overly incredible. However, the being able to actually destroy an artifact or enchantment is solid and does this make this worthwhile, especially if you're running an elf or a Kithkin or a goblin deck if you happen to mix green in with the goblins. But you're definitely able here to destroy an enchantment or an artifact that could disrupt your opponent. So I think that this card is probably the one of the better ones of all the changelings, and I'm actually a fan of it. Plus, I really like the art on this card. Then we have Crossroads Watcher. 2 and a green. We get a 3/3 Kithkin Ranger with Trample. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Again, we have a lot of things that will allow us to create tokens. And if we have this on the battlefield, we get Trample. We could easily get this up to a 6/6 or sorry, a 6/3 or a 7/3 and be able to trample through. Maybe it dies, but at least we got some damage through. Next up, we have Dawn's Light Archer. 2 and a green. We get a 4/2 Elf Archer with Flash and Reach. Super killer card that if for some reason we have this open and we want to block a flyer out of nowhere, or we want to just play this in the end step because we just, didn't have a better option. This was the only 3-drop in our hand. We can give off the illusion that we don't have anything, let them start to do things, flash this in, block, or flash this in their end step, and we're swinging for 4 the next turn. We can let their damage go through for 1, swing in, hit them for 4. Then we have Formidable Speaker. For 2 and a green. We get a 2/4 Elf Druid. When this creature enters, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. For 1 tap, untap another target permanent. So this is a great way for, if we've been ramping so far and we've been building it up so that we can play bigger things, this card will allow us to go in and get the creature card that we're wanting to be able to play with that ramp. So I think that this is one of those cards. Either one of these we would really love to drop on turn 3, especially Formidable Speaker if we're trying to ramp to a particular card and we don't have it in our hand and it hasn't made it into the graveyard yet. This is the card we really want. All right, and we have Mutable Explorer. For 2 and a green. We get a 1/1 Shapeshifter with Changeling. When this creature enters, create a tapped Mutavault token. It's a land with tap, add colorless, and one, this token becomes a 2/2 creature with all creature types until end of turn. It's still a land. This is just a great mana sink for us to be able to A, ramp, and B, have a creature that we can recur and, just have it there. And if it doesn't die, then it's just gonna go back to being a land. So it's a super cool way for us to have that. Then we have a Vine-Bred Brawler for 2 and a green. It's a 4/2 elf berserker. This creature must be blocked if able. Whenever this creature attacks, another target elf you control gets +2/+1 until end of turn. So a lot of times this is not necessarily going to trade up, but it is going to take something off the battlefield because most likely it does die to smaller things. They're probably going to try and chump it with something. However, when they attack with this, it does also get to have the +2/+1 added to another elf. So you're going to be slipping in some damage, especially if turn 3, you've already kind of wiped their board a little bit. They have one creature on the board. Well, that one creature has to block this, and you're probably pumping your 2/2 over there with a +2/+1. And so now you're still getting through the 4 damage and wiping their last creature off the board. So this is a pretty solid 3-drop. It's not my favorite, but it will get the job done. It will help all your elves kind of be better, and it does fit into that game plan. Now we have Tristan, Callous Cultivator for 2 and a green. We get a 3/4 legendary elf druid with Death Touch. Whenever this creature enters or transforms into Tristan, Callous Cultivator, mill 3 cards. Then if there's an elf card in your graveyard, you gain 2 life. Chances are you're going to have an elf card in your graveyard if you're playing some elves. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay 1 black. If you do, transform Tristan. If you paid that black, then it will become Tristan Penitent Color, and it will be an elf warlock, still 3/4 with Death Touch. Whenever this creature transforms into Tristan Penitent Color, mill 3 cards. Then you may exile an elf card from your graveyard. If you do, each opponent loses 2 life. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay 1 green. If you do, transform Tristan. So realistically, on the front side, we're gaining life. On the back side, we're draining them for life. And it's all coming around to getting those elves in the graveyard. So those surveil elves are helping us put them there. And then this is a payoff for us to be able to do it. And at a 3/4, it is a little more difficult to get rid of. And if they do get rid of it, they're having to use a removal that they probably would rather use on something a little bit bigger later. So it's kind of a win-win for us. It's a good way for us to gain some life, a good way to kind of get some life from them as well once we flip it. Next up, we have Unforgiving Aim for 2 and a green. We get an instant, which says choose one. Destroy target creature with flying, destroy target enchantment, or create a 2/2 black and green elf creature token. Now for 3 and an instant, this does give us a lot of versatility. The being able to destroy a creature only if it has flying does make this very limited. Destroy a target enchantment makes it limited. However, the one that we can consistently use is that create a 2/2 black and green elf creature token. Realistically, I don't think playing 3 for a 2/2 creature token is going to be the play here. I think realistically, the majority of the time you're going to use that, and you're either going to use it in an end step or you're going to put it, pre-combat to be able to chump block something. But outside of that, it's a very limited card. You don't have a lot that you can do with it, especially in a limited format where the slots that you have for non-creature spells is already so limited. I think you're going to want something that can definitely be a little bit more versatile in the slot. Now we have Tend the Sprigs for 2 and a green. It's a sorcery, and it says search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Then, if you control 7 or more lands and or treefolk, create a 3/4 green treefolk creature token with reach. Um, I think this is a pretty solid card, right? We're already trying to ramp, we're already trying to get things out, and at the very least, this will allow us to actually play this, get us a land out. And if we have all the extra tree folk and the lands, then we're just going to get a 3/4 green tree folk token. With reach, I think that that's very good. It's not perfect and it's not the most amazing thing, but it does allow us to again get lands out of the deck, put them on the battlefield, and allow us to actually start building this up. Because the nice thing is that technically in this turn, we could have played a land, played this, and then we got a second land. Again, we've ramped. And, on turn two, we played a creature that could potentially tap for two. We're building up. We're trying to play really big things as fast as possible. I mean, realistically, we're untapping on turn four with four lands already on the board and potentially playing our fifth land on turn four. And that doesn't include any of the creatures we already have on the battlefield that will tap for mana as well. All right, we're back to some enchantment auras. We got Gilt Leaf's Embrace for 2 and a green. It has flash and it's enchant creature. When this aura enters, enchanted creature gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. Enchanted creature gets +2/+0. I think this is realistically, again, it's a combat trick. We're looking to be able to flash this in mid combat. They decided they were going to block with a creature that was just a little bit larger than ours, thinking that they weren't going to be able to do anything. Well, cool. We killed your creature. We got some damage through, maybe a point or two of damage, and we had indestructible, so we're not even losing our creature. It's going to stick around. And the nice thing is, this aura is going to stick around, so this creature is still going to have trample, won't have trample anymore, but it does still get that +2/+0. So that is valuable, being able to do that, so we can get something off the battlefield and still get that extra 2 points of damage going into additional turns. Definitely potentially worth it, and probably one of my favorite combat tricks we've seen so far. All right, we got Bristlebane, Outrider. It's a 3 and 1 green for a 3/5 Tifkin Knight. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. As long as another creature entered the battlefield under your control this turn, this creature gets +2/+0. Again, with what we're trying to do with green, we realistically probably can drop this a turn early. So dropping this on turn 3 heavily can help limit what they can actually block this with, and getting that extra +2/+0 if we've had another creature into the battlefield can be detrimental very fast. I mean, realistically, we're swinging in on turn 5 for a quarter of your life on that one turn, and that doesn't include anything we've chipped away at before. So I think this is a pretty solid, and being an uncommon, this is really what will allow you to know where your real power lies, as typically your uncommons. So this is an uncommon to keep an eye out for sure. Then we have Champions of the Perfect. For 3 and a green, we get a 6/6 elf warrior. As an additional cost to cast the spell, behold an elf and exile it. So you're going to take an elf that you have in control, exile it, or show an elf in your hand and exile that. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. When this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to its owner's hand. Again, this is exactly what we're wanting to do with elves, right? We can get some ETB triggers off of some elves, or with the actual exiling of it. And then we actually can play creatures, which we already want to do playing elves, draw a card. So we're always going to be able to draw those cards. And then when this creature does leave, we're going to get the card back that we beheld back to our hand, and we're going to be able to play it again. So if that has an ETB trigger, we'll be able to play it in. If it was already in the battlefield, cool. We get to cast it a second time. This is a super powerful card, and I think this is one of the better champions of this set across all the colors. Definitely worth keeping an eye out for it in your pool. All right, next up we have Lusk. For 3 and a green. We get a 2/4 elemental with Death Touch. So we don't really even care about the do, honestly. It's gonna kill whatever it touches anyways. So I think we're good there. And then it has Vivid. When this creature enters, you gain life equal to the number of colors among permanents you control. Again, in a limited format, this is usually going to be 2. But there are ways for us to cheat this in limited for sure. Doing those dual mana cards, those are the ones that have the pips that are split, that you can pay either green or black or white or red. Those do count as both colors, so that is a nice thing. It's a way for us to cheat a little bit extra out of these vivid. But for this one, just generally the way that I would explain it is just pretty much always assume that vivid is just going to probably hit for 2, as a safe rule. If you hit for more, congratulations, you've gotten a bonus. But generally, if you can consider it, that it's probably going to hit for 2, because in limited, we're generally only playing 2 colors. Then we have Moon Vigil Adherence. For 2 green green, we get a 0/0 elf druid with trample, and this creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control and each creature card in your graveyard. Again, having this one doesn't even care about elves in the graveyard, but we have other elves that care about putting elves in the graveyard. So because we're getting +1/+1 for all our creatures, both on the battlefield and in the graveyard, we don't really care where they end up for this particular card. Super solid card. Again, uncommon, worth keeping an eye on this card. It's going to be super powerful. You're going to find yourself in a pretty good position because almost guaranteed this card's probably not going to be sitting at a 4/4. It's probably going to be sitting at 5/5 or a 6/6. Because it is important. It does count itself in this because it's this creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control. It doesn't say each other creature. So keep that in mind. All right, next up we have Safe Right Cavalry for 3 and a green. We get a 4/4 elf warrior. And it says this creature can't be blocked by more than one creature. So they can't just chump this with a bunch of little things and trade off all their little things for this. They're going to have to use a big boy and potentially trade off a big boy if they want to get rid of it. And we have pay 5. Target elf you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Um, I'm not super excited about that ability. However, it does make me feel cool. Uh, like in a late game where we need some mana sinks and being able to give a target creature +2/+2, mid combat that wasn't blocked and being able to get that extra 2 points of damage, or even that was blocked and trade up or kill the thing but keep yours. It's super solid. I think it's worth it. It's not the best 4-drop out of them, but this is a very solid common. Um, Definitely worth keeping. Again, in this 4-drop slot, you're typically only looking for a couple of these. So you'd have to weigh what 4-drops you have and what other color you're playing. But I wouldn't be upset if this is one of the 4-drops that we're playing, because it definitely gives us the ability to have a mana sink later, which I could see us having, especially with all the ramp that we have if we were in elves already and can't be blocked by more than one creature. So we're kind of okay with, if they want to chump killing something and just hanging out with it. But generally, they're probably going to want to get rid of this pretty fast because even if it's tapped, we could still use its ability to pay the 5 and give things +2/+2 on the back. So when they go to swing back into us, we can still pump our stuff and kill their things. Next up, we have Pitiless Fists for 3 and a green. We get an enchantment aura. It says enchant creature you control. When this aura enters, enchanted creature fights up to one target creature an opponent controls, and your enchanted creature gets +2/+2. So again, this is a pretty cool fight spell that's going to permanently buff that creature until they get rid of it. I think that this is pretty solid. The biggest difference here is it doesn't have that flash. However, it is going to fight that creature um, on the other side. Now, it's important to note that this is a fight, so it's not the other one where it deals its power to the other one. This is a fight, so both creatures will actually deal damage to each other. So you could still lose your creature if you choose wrong. So pay attention to that. It's still a decent card. Just make sure that you pay attention whether you know you're going to lose your creature or not. Then we have Prismatic Undercurrents for 3 and a green. We get an enchantment, Vivid. Again, just assume 2 here. When this enchantment enters, search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. Reveal those cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. So again, we just gave ourselves where we could possibly, if we haven't played 2 lands this turn, we can just go ahead and play both of the lands we just got off of this, and then the next turn we'd be able to play 2 lands again if for some reason we're at that boat. This is a pretty solid card. Again, looking for some ramp abilities, being able to play this in, get our lands out, and just be able to play bigger things. I mean, realistically, you pay this turn 4. You have your 5th land out. You're untapping on turn 5 with 5, playing a 6th land because you just got it off of this, most likely. And now we're just in a really solid spot. All right, we got Mist Meadow Council for 4 and a green. We get a 4/3 Kithkin Advisor. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a Kithkin. Um, yeah, you're probably dropping this on turn 4 if you're playing Kithkins. It is important to note it says 1 less to cast if you control a Kithkin, so it doesn't compound. You don't get 1 off for each Kithkin. So just pay attention to that. The lowest you can pay for this is 4. When this creature enters, draw a card. Pretty solid. I mean, if you can get this thing off on turn 4, get a 4/3, and draw a card. This is a very solid common. I think that you're going to be pretty well off if you can get this to go. Then we have Pummeler for hire, a 4 and a green for a 4/4 giant mercenary with vigilance and reach, ward 2. So anything that they want to target this with, they're going to have to pay the additional 2. When this creature enters, you gain X life, where X is the greatest power among giants you control. Again, a lot of these giants care about having other giants. Now, super important that this creature has entered, so it will be 4 at least. If you have another one that is 6 or 7, then it'll be the 6 or 7. But you do have at least the 4 here because when it enters, you gain life, where X is the greatest power among giants you control. You control this because it's entered the battlefield. So keep that in mind. It is a pretty decent uncommon, especially with all of its, the vigilance, the reach, the ward 2, and being able to gain some life. Very, very solid card. Would not be upset having to play this. Selfless Safe Right, 3 green green for a 4/2 elf warrior. This is a rare, obviously. And then it has flash and convoke, so you can use your creatures to pay for this. And a creature can tap for the green as long as it has green in its mana cost. When this creature enters, choose a creature type. Other permanents you control of that type gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This is really cool. Mid combat, you're going to trade a bunch of things and things are all going to blow up in your side as well. Being able to flash this in for 4/2, super solid. Also important that you can do this defensively as well. They're swinging in with some decent sized things that you can trade off with, but they're going to kill you as well. You can flash this in. After you've declared your blockers, you'll flash this in. Use the creatures that you declared blockers to tap and pay for this. Put this in, you've now gained hexproof and indestructible. Super solid, definitely worth playing if you're looking for that type of thing. The 4/2 for 5 is not great, but because you can use other creatures to pay for it, it does make it a little bit better. You do get the flash and the additional ability. So this is kind of like a quasi flash combat trick all in one with a creature attached. Definitely a pretty solid card. And we've got Spry and Mighty for 4 and a green sorcery. Choose 2 creatures you control. You draw X cards, and the chosen creatures get +X/+X and gain trample until end of turn, where X is the difference between the 2 chosen creatures' powers. So, the best case scenario here is you have a 1/1 and a 7/7. So this would be 6. So X would equal 6. This is definitely useful if you're playing a deck where you're playing a lot of low-bodied things like Kithkins, and you have a couple of giants or elementals that just have really, really large power, this could definitely be worth it. Now, it does require that you have, um, you know, kind of multiple things to going here. Now, you could still do this for 1 or 2, but realistically, for this card to be really worth it, generally speaking, I'm probably going to want this to hit for X's 3. So at the bare minimum, if I have a 3/3 on the board, on the other side, I would like it to be a 7/7, or a 6/6 or a 7/7. But this is a decent card. It will definitely put you in a good spot if you get this to go off. But it is an if. This is not a guarantee. This is not necessarily going to win you the game, but it is a strong, solid card that I think in some instances is going to do you well. And if you notice that you have some bigger elementals and you're playing elves, for instance, and you can ramp into those bigger things, this is worth running a copy, I think. Prisma Basher for green green for a 6/6 elemental with trample, and it has vivid, so assume X is 2. When this creature enters, up to X target creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. Again, assume it's 2. There are ways for us to cheat it for 3 and 4. I keep saying it, but generally speaking, it's probably going to be 2 and limited unless you just get incredibly lucky and you can splash those colors in. But generally, it's going to hit for 2 because you're probably playing green with another color, whether it's red or black or whatever. So just assume 2. But getting a 6/6 trample for 6, pretty solid. especially if you're playing in green because you should have potentially a decent number of options to be able to ramp up to this and maybe play this a turn or two early. So I would say in those cases, this card is definitely much better. But if it's in a case where you have to hard cast this, it's probably not as amazing. Um, but it definitely is worth it. If you can ramp into it, I think this card becomes significantly better if so. All right, we've got Aurora Awakener for 6 and a green. It's a 7/7 giant druid with trample. Vivid, again, assume 2. When this creature enters, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X permanent cards, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. Put any number of those permanent cards onto the battlefield, then put the rest of the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Again, you're probably going to take both of them at that point and put them on the battlefield. So I think at this point, this card's just incredible. I mean, this is a bomb. This is one of those things that you open it and you're really wanting to play this, even if you have to splash for it. Luckily, it's not a double pipped green, because if it was, that would be a nightmare if you're having to splash, but it's a single green. So being able to splash for this wouldn't be too bad. But realistically, you're looking for this to be your color if you're opening this. It's that good. Then we have Wildvine Pummeler, 6 and a green, 6/5 giant berserker with vivid. Again, choose 2. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each color among permanents you control. So assume it's 2 less with reach and trample. I will say this: if you can get this thing down for um, 5, I think you're in a pretty good spot because you're getting reach and trample on a 6/5 for 5. Pretty solid. Now, obviously, the Awakener is significantly better and is definitely the card I would rather play. But you, unfortunately, in limited, don't get that choice. And constructed, obviously, you get a choice, but limited, we don't get that choice. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, the Wildvine Pummeler is going to be cheaper most of the time. It's also super important to note that both of these creatures could be cheated in a couple of the ways we've already seen, where you can get something back from the graveyard to the battlefield, or search the library and put it onto the battlefield, or search the library, put it into your hand. So you have ways to get these and try and get them onto the battlefield, and there's ways to cheat it. They're both pretty solid options, honestly. Also, if they go unanswered, they're pretty much game defining. These cards will win you the game if they go unanswered. All right, we got Sapling Nursery for 6 green green. It's an enchantment with an affinity for forest, so this spell will cost 1 less to cast for each forest you control. Let's be fair. If you're playing elves or something, you probably have a decent number of elves. So there is a chance that by the time you're getting closer to this, you're casting this for 3 or 4. And it has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, create a 3/4 green treefall creature token with reach. I'm gonna be honest with you, landfall is broken in my opinion because you're being rewarded for doing something that you need to do in order to cast a spell already. So that is super important. And do think about the fact that if you have a land card, think about the ordering. Make sure you don't play a land card. If you don't need it to cast this, make sure that you're stacking the triggers right or stacking the steps correctly. Play this and then play the land if you can. And then it has 1 and a green. Exile this enchantment. Tree folk and force you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This is definitely potentially worthwhile, but realistically, I think in most cases, especially in a limited format, we're pretty much going to want to leave this on the board, play some lands, and just keep getting those tree folk if we can. I think that that's the better option as far as limited is concerned, since especially a lot of wraths and board wipes aren't super prevalent here. So we don't have a lot of things that just say destroy a bunch of creatures. And if we're playing tree folk, generally speaking, they're going to be a little bit larger than a lot of the other creatures on the board anyways. So that's not really our big concern most of the time. Again, these are the cards that I would want to be keeping an eye out for. I think that these are really going to fit super well into a lot of different strategies, and especially within themselves. If you're playing elves or you're playing Kithkin, you're really going to get some good use out of them. And then those last few in the higher end that we were looking at, the Pummeler, the Sapling Nursery, and then the Aurora Awakener, they're game altering cards, especially the Pummeler and the Awakener. The nursery is just going to allow us to just get recurring payoffs where we're getting those 3/4 tokens, especially if we already have cards that can help get us some lands out of the deck as well. And we haven't quite used those just yet. So, you can put this down. You've already paid 4 or 5 for this. So you paid it a little, you got to play it a little bit early because of your force. And then you're playing some of the cards that'll allow you to go get some basic lands and then put them directly on the battlefield. And landfall happens when they enter. So if you go get two and both of them go on the battlefield, cool. You just got two of the 3/4 tree folk. So I think that this is super great. These are the cards I would watch out for. Honestly, if you've got a couple of these, I would say if you have 2 or 3 of these, green is probably a color to heavily consider. And once again, green in Lorwyn Eclipsed is really about inevitability through board presence. We're wanting to ramp, fix, and put real size into play, basically making our opponent overwhelmed by tall creatures while still trying to go wide with like things like the elves and Kithkins. So we're really using the giants and things to go tall, but they're an addition to whatever else we're doing right now. The color strength comes from creatures that matter at every stage of the game. Early bodies that trade, mid-game threats that dominate combat, late game pressure that forces answers, and being able to cheat in and slip in some early drops earlier than we should, right? Some of those big giants and things, we can definitely get those out sooner. We don't have to wait till turn 6 and 7. Green doesn't rely on tricks or surprises overly much. While we do have some of those, we just can win by just being bigger, wider, and just being more difficult to deal with turn after turn, especially with fixing and ramp that lets green support splashes and multicolored decks without falling behind. That makes it a strong base color and limited, especially for slower pods. So just keep in mind that if you do get into a position where you might need to play another color, we do have, if you have the cards that'll allow you to grab basic lands and things, it is worth potentially doing because green will give you some chances to fix that. The power is spread across the commons and the uncommons. Rares help you close the games here for sure, but green already functions without them. The uncommons really are strong. The rares and mythics might outpower them, but the uncommons are game winners on their own. And if your opponent runs out of profitable blocks and board starts to feel one-sided, that's green just doing exactly what it's supposed to do in Lorwyn Eclipsed.